SLT Mobitel Home Broadband සමගින් non-stop ගමනකට data බෝවන්. SLT Mobitel Home Broadband සමගින් non-stop ගමනකට data බෝවන්.
Tonight, enough is enough. Tensions soar in Colombo as IUCF protesters fired with tear gas and water cannons. Police curfew declared in Colombo until further notice. UNHRC and US Colombo envoy calls for peaceful protests. Cause and effect. While Lanka IOC holds fuel issuance to the public due to protests, CPC opens registration for priority accounts to consumers with US dollars. Scandalous. Minister of Power and Energy calls for inquiry into PUCSL chairman's comments to cope on fuel being sold at higher prices. This Friday, the 8th of July 2022.
නව ලයිෆ් බොයි කොහොම ස්වභාවික කොහොම සාරයෙන් සමග හානිකර පැරබන් රහිතයි.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to AdaDerana 24's English News. I'm Andrew Bernard. Now a mass anti-government protest is organised to be held tomorrow and to urge President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and the government to resign. The protest is expected to attract large numbers to the general public from across the island to Colombo. Meanwhile, tear gas was fired to disperse the protest march organised by the Inter-University Federation when they attempted to march via the bank of Ceylon Mawatha to Golfes.
A series of mass protests against the government has been organised once again, calling for the president and the government to resign due to their failure to handle the economic crisis. One such demonstration began from the Kelaniya University today as the inter-university students organised a protest march to express their objection. A tense situation erupted in the evening when protesters who arrived in Colombo attempted to march towards Golfes via the bank of Ceylon Mawatha. Tear gas and water cannons were fired by police to disperse them. Meanwhile, tomorrow, a mass demonstration against government is scheduled to be held in Colombo with the participation of a large number of civil organizations and members of the clergy. Invitations calling the public gather were circulating in social media platforms during the past few days. The protests are expected to attract crowds from several parts of the country. A group of protesters from Chile who are expected to participate in the demonstration tomorrow arrived in Colombo today. Taking the protest into account, The All Island Private Pharmacy Owners Association announced to keep their pharmacies across the island closed tomorrow. Meanwhile, in other demonstrations, a hunger strike was organized by members of Buddhist clergy near the Bodhiraja temple in Fort for a second day. One member of the clergy fell ill during the strike and was provided with medical assistance.
Now, police curfew has been declared in several police areas of the Western Province with effect from 9 p.m. today. Inspector General of the Police C.D. Vikramaratne announced that police areas of Negombo, Kelaniya, Nugegoda, Mount Lavinia, Colombo, North Colombo, South and Colombo Central will remain under curfew. Now, in the meantime, with protests scheduled to take place tomorrow, police media spokesperson SSP Nihal Talduwa urged the public to ensure that the protests are carried out in a peaceful manner. He said that if the protests take a violent turn, the police will have to take measures to control any form of violence within the framework of the law.
අද දිනේත් ඒ වගේම හෙට දිනේත් කොළඹ සහ ඒ තදාසන්න ප්‍රදේශවලට විශේෂයෙන්ම කොටුව ප්‍රදේශයට විවිධ විරෝධතාවයන් පැවැත්වෙන බවට විවිධ සමාජ මාධ්‍ය ජාලා ඔස්සේ තොරතුරු හුවමාරු වෙනවා. ඒ වගේම බුද්ධ්‍යංශ විසිනුත් වාර්තා කරලා තියෙනවා. අප මහ ජනතාවගෙන් ඉල්ලා සිටින්නේ ඔබගේ විරෝධතාවයන් ප්‍රචණ්ඩකාරීත්වයට, කලහකාරීත්වයට යොමු වුණොත් එහිදී පොලිසියට සිදු වෙනවා යම්කිසි ආකාරයකට නීත්‍යානුකූලව නීතියේ රාමුව ඇතුළත කටයුතු කරන්නට.
Now, the Lanka Indian Oil Corporation announced today that it will not issue fuel to the people today and tomorrow due to the anti-government protests that are scheduled to take place. However, it stated that they will continue to issue fuel to the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and for the industries until they resume fuel issuance to the general public on Sunday. In the meantime, police announced that 7 suspects, including 2 of the main suspects, in connection to the murder of the 25-year-old youth at the fuel queue who was murdered, have been apprehended so far. The fuel needs of the general public are currently being fulfilled through refilling stations belonging to the Lanka Indian Oil Corporation, while it also sells fuel to the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation to fulfill issuance to essential services. Due to this situation, demand for fuel that was once divided among the Sipetco and the Lanka IOC refilling stations have now been diverted to the Lanka IOC refilling stations. Managing Director of Lanka IOC Manoj Gupta, taking to Twitter, announced that they will not issue fuel to the general public today and tomorrow due to protests that have been planned to take place. He went on to say that even though they will not issue fuel to the public, their Trincomalee fuel terminals will remain open and continue to issue fuel to the CPC and for industries. The LIOC Managing Director further stated that they will resume distributing fuel to the general public starting from Sunday morning. Meanwhile, as people continue to queue outside LIOC refilling stations for days and nights, many continue to be on edge and are frustrated by having to wait in queues. Due to this, multiple instances of violence and tensions have been reported. Yesterday, an escalation of a tense situation which took place at a Love's refilling station in Magal, Lagol, led to the murder of an individual. The situation had begun when a person who arrived in a car attempted to jump the queue that had been formed outside the refilling station. As the individual proceeded to park his car in between the gap of 2 vehicles, a group of people behind the person who had attempted to jump the queue protested against the move. As such, the individual had proceeded to call some of his associates who later arrived at the location carrying knives and swords and attacked the youth who had protested against the person who jumped the queue. As tensions escalated, a 25-year-old youth who sustained injuries was admitted to the Karapidia Teaching Hospital along with 3 others. However, the 25-year-old had died upon admission. The 25-year-old victim was identified as Achira Salinda, a resident of Vanchavala in Gaul and a graduate of the General Sir John Kotalavala Defence University. The police said 7 suspects, including 2 main suspects, were arrested in connection with the murder. In other developments, bus and railways trade unions have announced that they will boycott services if fuel is not provided for employees to report to their places of work. The Sri Lanka Transport Board workers announced that they will withdraw from duties if they are not provided with the required amounts of fuel to report to their places of employment. Further, the chairman of the Station Masters Union, Sumedha Somaratna, stated that if there is no proper arrangement to supply fuel to railway employees, the train services will be called off without prior notice. In the meantime, in a letter addressed to the Minister of Public Administration, Dinesh Gunawardana, chairperson of the Women's Parliamentarians Caucus, Dr. Sudarshini Fernandapulle, said that due to the fuel crisis, expected mothers employed in the government sector to be mandatorily reassigned to workplaces closer to their residences. She also went on to say that if they cannot be relocated to institutions close to their residences, they should be given the opportunity to carry out their duties online under a work-from-home mechanism. Meanwhile, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has held discussions with the two representatives from a Russian oil firm that arrived in Sri Lanka yesterday. The representatives are said to have also met with Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara and Governor of the Central Bank Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe. Now, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation announced today that it has opened its registration process for the people to open priority consumer accounts to purchase fuel for US dollars. The applications could be downloaded from the CPC's website www.cipetco.gov.lk. The relevant conditions, the USD payment process and the infrastructure requirements to be completed by the applicant after the authorization has been granted by the CPC can also be viewed through their website. The Minister of Power and Energy last week announced that any company or industry capable of paying in US dollars can open a consumer account at the CPC to obtain a weekly guaranteed fuel quota. However, he said that they would be required to pay a month in advance and fuel will be issued either on a daily or weekly basis from the 12th of July. He added that customers who have already made payments will receive their quotas starting from the day. We'll be back after this short break. Stay with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. Now, Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara has requested the Committee of Public Enterprises to inquire into the allegations made by Chairman of the Public Utilities Commission that fuel can be sold at a price of approximately 250 rupees. In response, the COP has already decided to summon the Secretary of the Ministry of Power and Energy, Chairman of the officials of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and the PUCSL Chairman on July 12th pertaining to the matter. Chairman of the Public Utilities Commission Janaka Ratnayaka claimed before the Committee of Public Enterprises on Wednesday that fuel is supplied by the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation at higher prices to the Ceylon Electricity Board, which increases CB's cost in purchasing fuel for power generation. In his personal statement, he said that petrol and diesel can be sold at a price of approximately 250 rupees.
අපි ඩීසල් ආනයනය කරන මූලික කොස්ට් එක දාලා තියෙන්නේ USD ඒ කියන්නේ CIF එක වැලියු එක දාලා තියෙන්නේ ඩොලර් සාමාන්‍ය 174ක් වගේ. ඒකට අපි පරිශීලනය කරනකොට මේ ලැබුණු දත්ත මේ ආනයනය කරලා තියෙන shipments එකක්වත් 174ක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ ආනයනය කරලා තියෙන්නේ CI 110ත් අතර. IOC එකෙන් ගණනලා තියෙනවා ජූලි 1 වෙනිදා ඩීසල් කන්සයින්මන්ට් එකක්. ඇත්තටම තෙල් ආනයනය කරන වියදම රුපියල් 300කට වැඩි වෙන්නේ නැහැ. මේක බොරුවක් නෙවෙයි මේ කස්ටෙක් ඩොකියුමන්ට්ස් වල තියෙන ඇත්ත කතාව.
ඒතර මේ ගෙනල්ලා තියෙන්නේත් ওই ගානට
මේ ගානට ගෙනල්ලා තියෙන්නේ
250ට අඩුවෙන්.
එක ඕකේ තියෙනවා එක ෆර්නස් ඔයිල් ගෙනල්ලා තියෙන රුපියල් දැන් අපේ ප්‍රශ්නේ තියෙන්නේ ෆර්නස් ඔයිල් කොස්ට් එක 171යි CPC එක CBT උගනන්නේ 419ට. රුපියල් 250ක් charge කරනවා එක ලීටරයකින්.
අපිට සාමාන්‍ය මිනිස්සුන්ට ඕන ඩීසල් සහ පෙට්‍රල්නේ. ඒක රුපියල් 250ට දෙන්න පුළුවන්කම තියෙද්දි මේ 400 ගණන් වලට දෙනවා කියන එකනේ ඔබතුමා කියන්නේ.
ඔව්. කවුරුහරි කියනවා නම් මේක රුපියල් 400යි 450ක් ගෙනාලා ඒක බොරුවක්. ඒක ඇත්ත කතාවක්. මම කියන්නේ මේ ගේන ගාන රුපියල් 200ක් වුණාම කොහොමද ඒක 400ක් වෙන්නේ? ඒක වෙන්න බෑ. මේක ටැක්ස් එකක් ගෙවලා මේ එක එක තෙල් ජාති කොස්ට් වෙන්නේ රුපියල් 250ක් 170ක් 180ක් 220ක් මේ ඇත්ත කතාව ගිවිසුමාන වෙනකම්.
However, this morning, Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara has requested the Committee on Public Enterprises to inquire into allegations levelled by the Chairman of the Public Utilities Commission with regard to the fuel prices and procurement process. In a tweet, Minister Vijay Sekara requested the committee chairman, Professor Charitha Herath, to summon the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation officials and him before the court to look into the allegations. He said that an inquiry should be conducted to determine whether the PUCSL chairman has misled the corp and the members of the public through his claims. In response to Minister Vijay Sekara's tweet, Corp chairman Professor Charitha Herath said that they have already decided to summon Secretary of the Ministry of Power and Energy, chairman and officials of the CPC, as well as the PUCSL chairman on the 12th of July. Now, the Bar Association of Sri Lanka says that the draft of the 22nd Amendment Bill does not meet the people's aspirations for change in the country's political system. Speaking at a media briefing today, BSL President's Council Salih Piris expressed concern over several matters such as the ability of the President to hold the portfolio of defence, independence of the proposed Constitutional Council, and the President's powers not being curtailed. They proposed that the government to rethink and make the necessary changes the BSL has highlighted in order for the amendment to be more meaningful.
In its present form, the 22nd Amendment Bill does not meet the aspirations of the people who are agitating for a change in the system. It would not result in a change in the system which would result to resolve the economic crisis and would not result in the establishment of independent institutions. The 22nd Amendment proposes the establishment of a constitutional council and independent commissions. But we are concerned about the process of appointments to the Constitutional Council and its composition. The Constitutional Council will have 7 parliamentarians and 3 non-parliamentarians. Now, among the 3 non-parliamentarians, the 22nd Amendment has proposed that they should be appointed with the approval of a majority of the members of Parliament. So what would happen is that the majority in Parliament would be able to control the composition of the Constitutional Council. If the Constitutional Council is not independent, then a question would arise as to the independence of the appointments which the Constitutional Council approves or the appointments which the Constitutional Council proposes to the independent commissions. We are also concerned that the 22nd Amendment proposes to allow the President to hold on to the defence portfolio. Now, the problem in that is the subjects, functions, institutions which should come under the defence portfolio are not limited by the proposed amendment. At the moment, the President is retaining certain portfolios which are unconnected to defence. So, for instance, the Sri Lanka Telecom, the Telecommunication Regulatory Commission, if the 22nd Amendment is passed as it is, it could allow the President of this country to retain certain subjects which are wholly unrelated to defence under the Defence Ministry. Then we also observe that the provisions relating to the appointment and removal of secretaries to ministries are the same as the present constitution. So the amendment makes no change. But the appointments of secretaries are vital, are an important aspect of independence, because otherwise what could happen, a president of the country could try to run ministries through the secretaries appointed by him, bypassing the cabinet of ministers. So we are of the view that that also must be changed if the 22nd Amendment is to be meaningful. We also note that even with the 22nd Amendment, the President's powers over Parliament relating to prorogation and dissolution will not change. One of the most important aspects of bringing in a new constitutional amendment is to curtail the powers of the presidency. Because of the transitional provisions, and because of there not being changes in relation to President's powers over Parliament, we do not see at this point a meaningful curtailment of the powers of the President.
Now, in the meantime, the Minister of Agriculture, Mahinda Amaraveera, offered an optimistic outlook regarding the food situation in Sri Lanka, reassuring that farmers will be able to produce enough rice for September, October and November. This comes amidst a grim forecast issued by the Premier and other experts that the country will face a food shortage in September. Minister Amaraveera went on to say that the country will receive a shipment of 43,999 metric tons of fertilizer tomorrow and will make fertilizer available to farmers at 10,000 rupees.
මේක ඇත්තටම දැන් එන්න තිබුණේ 9 වෙනිදා රෑ එළි වෙන්න වගේ වෙලාවට දැන් කලින් එනවා. ප්‍රමාණය මේ වතාවේ මේ නැවෙනවා මෙට්‍රික් ටන් 43999ක්. ඊළඟට තව එන්න තියෙනවා ඉතිරි ප්‍රමාණය. අනිද්දා ඉඳලම අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා මේවා දිස්ත්‍රික්කවලට ප්‍රවාහනය කළ දෙන්න ගොවිජන මධ්‍යස්ථාන හරහා මේ පෝර ගේනවා කියපු වෙලාවෙ ඉඳලා ගොඩාක් අය කියන්න ගත්තා මේ එන්නේ බාල පෝර කියලා. අද වෙනකොට ජාත්‍යන්තර වශයෙන් ලැබුණු වාර්තා තුනම අපේ ප්‍රමිතියට වඩා ඉතාමත් හොඳ තත්යකට ප්‍රමිතියටත් වඩා ඉහළ මට්ටමකට ඒ වාර්තා තුනේම සඳහන් වෙනවා. පෝර මිටියක් අද වෙළඳ පොලේ තියෙන 40000කට වැඩියෙන් අපි මේ පෝර ලබා දෙන්නේ රුපියල් 10000 බැගින්. අපි එන අවස්ථාවේ හෙක්ටයාර් 248000ක් තමයි වී වගා කරලා තිබුණේ. 275000ක් විතර වගා වෙයි කියලා තමයි අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ. නමුත් ඊයේ වෙන අපිට ලැබුණු සංඛ්‍යාලයකන අනුව මේ වර්ෂයේ හෙක්ටයාර් 5,50,000කටත් වැඩි ප්‍රමාණයක් වගා කරලා තියෙනවා. අපි මුලින් කිව්වා මේ මුළු අස්වැන්නයි ඔක්කොම එකතු වුණාම සැප්තැම්බර් වෙනකන් තමයි කන්න තියෙන්නේ අපිට සහල් කියලා. නමුත් දැන් අපි එහාට ගිහිල්ලා මේ ගොවි ජනතාව මේ අභියෝගේ බාරගත්තු නිසා සැප්තැම්බර්, ඔක්තෝබර්, නොවැම්බර් මාසවලටත් ඇති වෙන්න සහල් නිෂ්පාදනයක් සිද්ධ වෙනවා.
Now, meanwhile, in a special statement with regard to the protest tomorrow, the United Nations Human Rights Council urged Sri Lankan authorities to show restraint in the policing of assembling and ensure that every necessary efforts to prevent violence is taken. In the meantime, US Ambassador to Sri Lanka Julie Chung requested the public to protest peacefully and reminded the military and police to grant peaceful protesters the space and security for protesting. The UN Human Rights Council issued a statement today pertaining to the planned protest tomorrow. According to the statement, UNHRC urges Sri Lankan authorities to show restraint in the policing of assemblies and ensure every necessary effort to prevent violence. The UNHRC appeals to the organizers of the protests and their supporters to engage in peaceful means of protest and not to impede essential medical or humanitarian services. It also says that the government needs to give strict instructions to the police and the armed forces to desist from violence in dealing with the public and to act with utmost restraint. The UNHRC statement also said that the military should not be used to police assemblies as a general rule and in exceptional circumstances rather, where members of the military carry out law enforcement functions, they are bound by international norms and standards and must remain fully subordinate to civil authorities and accountable under civilian law. Taking the protest tomorrow in account, US Ambassador to Sri Lanka Julie Chung requested the public to protest peacefully. In a tweet, she reminded the military and police to grant peaceful protesters the space and security for protest and added that chaos and force will not fix the economy or bring the political stability that Sri Lankans need right now. Meanwhile, the United National Party expressed their support for the protest tomorrow. In a statement, the party said that the law enforcement authorities should protect law and peace without causing disturbances to the protesters. Now that's all from us here at First and 9. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.